And I do appreciate everyone being here today. Got a lot of good things I want to go over about Intel vPro technology. And my name is Eric Townsend. I work on America's Marketing Group, and I just want to take time today just to kind of walk through some information. So on the next slide, you know, when you hear about vPro technology, everyone usually has questions of, okay, well, gosh, it's on desktops, on notebooks. What's this whole thing about? And first question that comes up is, how do I know if the system actually is vPro or not? And on this slide here, this just kind of gives you the overview of what vPro is, and specifically on top, you'll see there's two logos up there. Until we've got lots of logos for things, and you'll see in the lower right-hand corner of the logo it says vPro. So you'll see Core i5 with vPro and Core i7 with vPro. And one thing to understand is that a vPro system is actually not just about the processor. vPro is made up of four pieces: the processor, the chipset, the network connection, and firmware. So if you think about it, right, whenever you're going and you're walking to a customer environment or you're managing specific systems, if you're looking at the system, you're able to see it, and you look at that logo and it says vPro on it, you know it's got all four of those pieces. If it was just a Core i5 system, just the processor, it would only have Core i5 actually on the logo. It would be nothing else. So those four pieces, we have Core i5 vPro, Core i7 vPro. But the key thing that makes it different is that you're actually going to be able to, with the vPro system and the management console, be able to do a lot more things remotely. And what I mean by this is you're going to be able to do things secure remotely, and we're going to get into the details of all things you can do. But I first want to start off just to give you a definition of what vPro is. It is both in desktops and in notebooks by a lot of different manufacturers. In fact, in about 5 or 10 minutes, I'll show you a place where you can find out all the manufacturers have that. And it's actually been out for a good bit of time. So on the next slide, I want to make sure you see when we talk about vPro and where it's at and where it's been. In 2006, it actually came out, and now it's actually 2010, and going into 2011, we've done a lot more with it. In North America, that's a lot of what I drive. We have in excess of 200 MSPs in North America. Those are the top MSPs. Have a really large growth percentage using vPro today that we're actively engaging with. I think our range is 600 to 700 in general that are actually using vPro in their desktop and notebook PC management service. Relevant service providers, a lot of different channel partners. So a lot of people have actually been using vPro in their services offerings. So that's the key thing to understand. And it's something that's constantly growing. So I want to make sure it's clear is that vPro, when we brought it out in 2006, all the way to 2011, we're adding more and more features on it. We're working with Kaseya to figure, okay, how can we actually make our joint solution better and putting these features in it, and you're going to hear a lot more about that today. So I gave you the basic of what vPro is. I kind of show you how it's been growing. If you go to the next slide, now I kind of want to set you out of really what's the value of using it. And there's lots of things in this slide, but there's one thing I'm going to kind of focus on. It's this thing that's in blue, the sentence, and it's underlined. If you could take one thing away from this portion of the webinar today of the value of vPro, is that if you're managing vPro systems and you've got your console and you're managing them, you can access them even if the system, the PC is blue screened or if it's powered down. So that's kind of a big thing. I want to make sure you get that. So the access system, the PC is powered down and the OS is inoperable. What this really means, right, is that from a base business perspective, you can now provide a higher service level agreement. So normally, you have to talk to your customers and say, hey, make sure you leave your systems on. I'm going to make my updates tonight will be good. I've had some partners say, well, I tell them to leave their systems on, but they turn them off. Once you turn them off, you can't get to them. Now with the vPro, you can get to them and you can bring them up, make the updates, and turn them off. You can also do a lower service delivery cost, right? So you can do more things remotely. So if that customer calls and they have the blue screen, you can actually go look at the system. You can reboot the system and see if it powers back up and see if there's a problem with the drive, or you can re-image it remotely. So a lot of things you can do there. Hardware change management, you can actually see there's new alerts that come in vPro. So via your Kaseya console, you can see an alert, for example, let's say you're managing an end customer environment and the customer gets a new desktop, and all of a sudden they decide they want to put a new Blu-ray drive in it, right? But they don't let you know about that. They just go in and take the chassis parts, start adding things in. Well, you actually get an alert let you know that actually someone took the chassis off. And so when the end customer calls and says, yeah, I've got some problems, my system's not running right, some drive issues, you'll actually see, okay, there's some things changed on this hardware, and you get more proactive information about it. And that gets the whole thing of when you do have to go out to the end customer environment and there is a problem with the hardware, you're going to be able to get a lot of information about it before you go out. Even the system, once again, if it's turned off, you're still going to be able to get access to different alert information about it. So big thing here, once again, just helping your overall services business when you're going out. If you didn't have vPro, you're probably running today where you got to make sure everyone leaves their systems on at night. You got to interrupt users during their day because that's when their systems are on. And then sometimes, when you're going out and you're trying to fix a problem, you got to go out multiple times. You got to go out to make sure the system's on, make sure you do some analysis, go back to the office, get one thing. Maybe it's a new hard drive, go back out. That isn't it. You make multiple trips. So it can become quite labor intensive. And when you overall think about implementing vPro in your services offering, right? It's a lot of OEM systems out there, both desktop and notebook, have vPro. But kind of the takeaway is that when you implement a system like this with vPro, you're going to have the ability to provide a higher SLA at a lower cost, and you're going to be able to do it with better security. So things are going to be better linked together. So a lot of things you'll take in today. But remember, if you have a vPro system, you can access it, PCs powered down, or the OS isn't working. So that's the technical bits and bytes of it. If you go to the next slide, when we think about vPro, there's the technical application, but I always like to give people an idea of what's actually being seen out in the real world. And when we talk about, whenever anyone on the phone here has had their services business, and they're saying, okay, well, if there's some type of new tool I want to implement, there's a cost for me to implement that, to take time out and get implemented. But how's it going to affect my business moving forward? And what I want to make sure everyone sees today is that for different managed service providers that we've worked with across North America, these are some numbers that we've gotten from them. And 40 to 50 MSPs we work with, time to repair hardware issues gone down dramatically. Time to repair software issues, 50% to 83% reduction. PC downtime, obviously that's a big thing I think for everyone here on the phone when they're working with their end customers, really to make sure that you keep the uptime a big deal. So the PC downtime, that's decreased. Time for patch saturation, that's decreased too. So making sure all systems are all the same, have the updated malware or antivirus software on there is very key. And then finally, just talking just for a minute about ways that maybe you can make money, right, with this technology. And you can see here power cost savings. This gets to the point of across the U.S., I think everyone knows, obviously, if you go to the gas station, you see an increase as far as in gas over the last couple of years, just the price. But it's also happening with electricity. And with vPro technology, you do have the capability, once again, you can turn that system off and you can turn it on. And if I just put it in numbers to you, if you talk to one of your end customers, and I'm going to tell you what an MSP did on the East Coast. He walked in one of his customers and said, hey, I have this way I can manage your power, but I want to show you how I can do it. So he says, can I see a copy of your current power bill? So the owner of the business got the power bill and showed it to him and said, look, here's my power bill. Anything you can do, I greatly appreciate. So he said, well, let me take this. I'm going to come back in a month, and I'm going to show you. I want to see the difference of what I did. And basically what he did is that every Friday night at around 10 p.m., he ran a script and he shut off the machines. And then every Monday morning at around 5 a.m., he turned the system on. Now, for a month, he basically saved 8 days of power because 2 days on the weekend times 4 weekends saved 8 days of power. Went back to his customer. He showed actually the power cost savings. And that power cost savings, that goes to your end customer's bottom line, right? Just running the business running, that's a big deal. But if you just quantify that over a year, so 2 days on a weekend times 52 weeks, you're saving over 100 days of power a year. So when I talk about this here and start showing you the power cost savings, this is per PC over a 3-year time frame. And that number, that 150 to 630, those are just averages that we have. There's some that are even higher than that. So the first 4 savings you can see here, this actually helps as far as decreasing just your service delivery costs. That power cost savings, this is going to give capability where maybe you can implement new services. Because that one MSP out on the East Coast, he actually charges $3 a month per system to manage his customer's environment from a power perspective. So once again, real numbers being implemented out with MSPs Next slide. I've kind of given you the idea of what vPro is, where it's been as far as with different functionality, the value of real numbers. I did want to make sure you know we've got a really key feature that we brought out last year, and it's being used more and more this year. It's called KVM remote control, and this is hardware-based KVM. And the little tiny commercial on this is basically I think everyone knows KVM's keyboard, video, mouse. But what ends up happening is that when you do software KVM, so you connect into a customer, you're going through, you're being the keyboard, you're moving things around the screen, you're making updates. When you go and restart the system to make the changes be active, when you restart the system, it cuts that software KVM session. And the end user has to turn the machine on, right? It's got to go and log in. And then, if they got to reset the KVM session, they can. But you basically lose visibility once they have to restart the system. On this hardware-based KVM, you actually get to keep that keyboard, video, mouse function. Even when the system restarts, you still have that function. You actually get to see the entire boot up process. So if you did an update on a user's machine, normally when that once restarts KVM, you lose it. But with hardware KVM that's built into vPro, you'll actually see it reboot. You can actually see, oh my gosh, well, I'm starting to get an error. And you can boot directly in the BIOS, and you can still keep that same functionality. So KVM, a really big feature. A lot of the MSPs you're working with, that right there is a big deal, because if I can do KVM, I can do a lot more things remotely. And literally, it's the same if you're sitting in their office and you're sitting behind their keyboard, except now you're able to do it in your office and be more efficient. So a lot of things on KVM. We'll talk more about that in a little while. Next slide. What I want to make sure you understand, too, is that vPro is something that's been out for about 5 years. It's not something that is just used by one or two folks. I want to make sure you see a lot of different types of MSPs that are actually using out there across the U.S. and Canada. It's actually, I run the Americas, but I have peers of mine in China, in New Zealand, in Australia, over kind of in Asia. Lots of people using it there, also over in Europe. But a lot of big impact that's being done. So from a manufacturer perspective, depending on which PCs, either desktop or notebooks, Lenovo, Dell, HP, Toshiba, a lot of different systems that are out there. But this is something that is definitely being adopted by a lot of MSPs out there, because, once again, it helps cost savings, right? Your bottom line to be affected, and also provides capability from a power perspective where you can start providing power management services overall. So, on the next slide, it gives you a little information. We've not only got all these different MSPs that are actually going and using vPro, but I want to make sure you saw here, we have a site called msp.intel.com/find a vPro system. It's up at the top there. You may want to write that URL down. This actually provides you an idea of all the different vPro systems that are out there. I mentioned it's been out for about 5 years. So you'll see up top here in the blue, this is all the desktops, and below that in the maroon, that's all the notebooks. And what I try to do is give you the first column tells you the current ones, but we've got past ones there, and then we've got the URL where you can go and search. So just to give you an idea, we first brought vPros in about 4 or 5 different SKUs. Today, there's about 90 SKUs out there today of vPro. And the key thing I want to make sure you understand is that you may be managing end customer environments today that already have vPro systems in there. So when we start telling you about the great features in Kaseya that you can manage today, it doesn't necessarily have to go buy new hardware. You can start doing that actively with some systems. So I provide this information for you because I want to let you know there's lots of different systems out there today, both desktop and notebook, that have this functionality. And then when you're starting to go and spec it in, you can start seeing, okay, which ones you need to go look at. And there are definitely a lot of ones out there. I'm showing you desktop and notebooks, but I think people have heard of all-in-one systems, kind of the flat panel systems. Those have vPro in them too. So definitely be looking at what's out there, not only in your current customer environment, what you're thinking about speccing in. So on the next slide, I want to make sure everyone understands that I've got a lot of information I've kind of shared with you, but I do want to thank you just for letting me come in, and I'm interested in your questions, so please make sure you keep submitting your questions.
Awesome. Eric, quick question for you. I mean, if you have a machine that doesn't have vPro, like it wasn't vPro enabled, is there any way to update that machine?
It's not, because it's back to that earlier comment, because normally people have a machine and it's got the Intel processor in it by itself. right? If there's no way to upgrade a vPro because you got to have the processor, chipset, network connection, and firmware. It's got to have all 4 of those pieces. So you'd have to put a brand new board and all. And whenever they're on the logo it says vPro, all those pieces have been validated together, right? So we've got all of our hardware validation teams make sure it works. And then we also work with Kaseya to make sure all the features that they have with vPro, all that stuff's working too. So.
Yeah, I guess it's important. I know in our MSP practice, we've just basically started, standardizing on machines that have vPro. Again, it may be just one here, one there, but eventually even over a generation, this is going to become a huge thing, so that we can help, reduce those trips.
Yep.
We're in Washington D.C. area. Traffic's horrible. So we definitely don't want to go out if we can avoid it.
And,
All right.
Chris, to let you know, one small thing is that for small businesses, the average is like between 15 to 20% a year is when they refresh. So no one's going to refresh all their systems at one time. So this is something you do over time. And the biggest thing is that you do want to start speccing in as soon as you can so that you can start getting those efficiencies, and that over a period of time, you'll start getting all of them.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit of a focus and making sure that the model that you're selecting has that capability. And occasionally you have to explain to the customer, some differences in price. What we've generally found is, it's not the vPro that jacks up the cost. It's that the OEMs tend to put more features into the machines that they've enabled vPro on, and so you're getting more of something and you just have to justify it.
And to Chris, currently today I was going to do a search actually yesterday. If you go to a Dell site, that's about probably I think it's about a $5 adder. If you go to HP site, it's about a $30 adder. And Lenovo actually systems right now, vPro ones that are no adder at all. So the pricing we brought up 5 years ago is different, but it's actually gone down a lot in the last 5 years.
Super. Thank you so much.